Welcome to Core Concepts. My name is James Renford Powell. I'm your host. And as you know, if you've been watching the shows on YouTube, you go to youtube.com, type in Renford Broadcast Network. If you're finding out about it somewhere else, then that's still the best way to go to get our shows. These shows, we have mostly religious and spiritual leaders, occasionally an agnostic, but come and tell us what they believe, why they believe it, and what they're doing about it. In other words, how did they come to that belief system, and how is it manifesting in their lives? The show, beginning in January, will be sponsored by Unity Christian Church, and will be coming to you from McCorkle Road in Memphis, Tennessee. At present, we're at the Grindz Coffee Shop on Dexter Road. Our sponsor here is Omar Sharif.
Oh. You suddenly got very good looking.
And Ahmed Sharif. He says that Omar Sharif is the rich one in the family. And we're here enjoying coffee and talking with, today our guest is Valentine Leonard. This is Dr. Valentine Leonard. Dr. Leonard was is a graduate, did her graduate work at the University of Memphis and taught there philosophy and women's studies, and has since conducted creative writing classes for about 3 years.
Yeah. Well, actually 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking to her about that and about her spiritual work. She has a number of modalities that she uses. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad you could be with us. Tell us a little bit about this experience of teaching at the University of Memphis. We haven't had too many professors here.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. Well, first of all, I come from France, so it was definitely a culture shock. And it was the first few years as a graduate student teaching there were very distressing to me. Partly because I had to teach how to write English to the American students, which was strange. But no, it was the University of Memphis is a really interesting place. The diversity of the student body and people coming from all over the state. It was just a great way for me to get introduced to this culture.
A lot of foreign students too.
Quite a few, but not so much in my classes actually, because I was teaching kind of core classes. So yeah, it was really interesting, and the graduate program there was really, really wonderful. So I had a great.
Well, you were teaching philosophy. Is that a kind of a general philosophy class? Or
Mostly I was teaching general education classes, history of philosophy, ancient, modern, feminism, and existentialism. That was my
your area.
Yeah.
And the women's studies?
Yeah, I was teaching women's studies as well. So that really, I love philosophy, but women's studies was my favorite thing to teach because I could see people's lives being transformed by it. I could see those women just discovering a whole new world opening up to them from teaching women's studies. Just more awareness of violence against women and issues that they live in their private life but don't realize how much it's a political problem and how many other women are struggling with similar issues. So it was a really empowering place for students to be.
What did that lead to your study of the different modalities and start working with counseling on that level?
In some ways, yeah, because as much as I love philosophy and love teaching philosophy, there was a sense in which it felt too abstract. I didn't feel like I was really contributing to people's happiness, and the whole point of philosophy is, you look at ancient philosophy, is how to live the happy life. And I was feeling like I was contributing to an academic endeavor, but it wasn't really having an impact on people's lives. It was too abstract. So I wanted to get into more practical things.
Because in those philosophy classes like that, you're studying Kant and you're studying different.
Yeah, and for me as a student, it was having a direct impact on me, studying those philosophers. But I realized that for the students I was teaching here, they needed something more practical to really be responsive to it. So it was in part responding to that.
So then you got into when you started with the women's study.
Women's studies, and then my own healing journey of going to counseling and realizing how transformative it was and how amazing, my life was being transformed in ways that I had never thought possible. And so I wanted also to be able to share that with other people.
Well, you went on a real rampage of studying here with all these modalities. I mean, tell us about some of these. Kundalini yoga is...
So Kundalini yoga is the latest.
The latest one? Well, we started the latest. Let's go back.
Well, I've been doing yoga for many years, but Kundalini yoga I started about 3 years ago, and then I went into the teacher training because I really loved it, and it's quite different than other kinds of yoga. Kundalini is the name of life force, basically, life energy. So it's a very spiritual form of yoga. It's a very ancient, almost esoteric.
Which is supposed to lie at the base of the spine.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So the idea is that Kundalini energy lies coiled at the base of the spine. And then, given the right conditions, it rises up the spine. And really what it does, the whole approach of Kundalini yoga is that the body, or actual physical body, is the vehicle to spiritual enlightenment.
The times that have seen some instruction on this and have used it, in fact, in the healing process, is the description of moving a latch like you would have over a telephone line, moving it aside and letting that coil, let it come up.
Yeah.
And always put it back and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, how do you use it in the yoga?
In the yoga, there's lots and lots of different series of exercises. There's always a lot of breath work, because the breath is really what connects us to that more subtle energy inside of us. So breath work, and then repetitive movements, series of exercises that kind of build on each other. We call them kriyas. So it's like one posture builds on another. It's like a poetic progression. One line builds on another.
Is that kriya as in kriya yoga? There is a kriya yoga.
There's a connection to kriya yoga. Kriya really just means a set, a series of exercises that build on each other. So Kundalini does that. It uses breath. It uses this movement, repetitive movements. We use a lot of chanting and mantra music. So the rhythm and the breath kind of combine, and the sound to create, to connect to those more subtle dimensions. So it's just a real, and then dancing as well. So it's a very active and very playful and very celebratory practice.
What do you have classes every week or several times a week or what?
Yeah, I teach at a studio that opened recently in Upton Square, Delta Group.
Yeah, well, Delta Group people think here,
and we do a lot of Kundalini yoga there, which is pretty rare still. It's not as well known in this area at least. And I teach there on Thursdays at noon and at 6. But a lot of other teachers teach that.
Now you formed an organization because we're going to get into the other one, because there are multiple modalities that you use in this counseling. I would call it spiritual counseling.
That's what I call it.
And it's called Soul Fuel. Soul Fuel LLC. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been doing all those things: the philosophy, the feminism, the counseling, the yoga, and I was just not sure how to present it, or to myself even how to make sense. And I was like, okay, I'm just too scattered. I need to find a way to bring all those things together and make it make sense to myself and to other people. And Soul Fuel, the name comes from a friend of mine who's a master coach, life coach, and I have done some workshops together, and we came up with that name for our organization. And that really kind of petered out for some reason, and then she very kindly allowed me to use the name for my own organization after that. But the idea was, to find the connection between all those modalities, and the connection that I've found is that, the life we live is a complicated life, and it has all those dimensions. It has a physical dimension, the yoga. It has subconscious dimension, the dream work. I do a lot of dream work, and it's a very creative life, the creative writing aspect of it. So really what I'm passionate about is seeing beyond appearances and helping people see beyond their own limitations or their own ideas of who they are to something. Usually the potential is much greater than anybody even imagines. And most people are afraid of that potential because it makes them realize that they have to make changes in their lives. And that's what the resistance comes from. We resist our own greatness.
That's funny because one of the first laws of Buddha, they say, is everything changes. And second, that all of our problems come from resistance to that change. That's a very Eastern philosophy you're working with there.
That's true, yeah. And also this idea, from the Course in Miracles, that what we're most afraid of is our own greatness. We're more afraid of success than we're afraid of failure. Because success requires so much responsibility for what we can do, So I'm really passionate about helping people connect to that greatness within themselves and help them find ways to express it in the world.
Could you tell us what led to, now you've got the dream work you mentioned, breath work, and a certain amount of Western EMDRT type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What led to each of these? I mean, you're in each case, I guess, embarking on this study because it's important to you, first.
Yeah, so all of those I found in different ways. Meditation, I've been meditating daily for about 15 years. And so it led me to study all kinds of different approaches to meditation because, I was getting bored if I did the same thing every day. So I was looking for
So you don't just use mantra, or you don't just use breathing?
No, I like to explore all the different ways. I've been reading a lot. I've been to different teachers. I've did the Kriya Yoga initiation, and I find wonderful things in each one of those traditions. But I find that for me, for my practice, I need to bring different bits of different traditions together, and to allow it to evolve organically as much as possible. And that was also part of my journey getting sober. I was an alcoholic, I guess. In AA you would say I am an alcoholic. But I really struggled with that for many years. And I really think, and I've been sober for 4 years, and I really think that meditation was key to that. Because that's what allowed me to come back again and again to that core, to that deeper self, that deeper purpose that would allow me to not drink, to not, go into my addictions. So for me, that's also why I want to share this, because I know it works. I know from my personal experience that it works, and it does amazing things.
Is there a process that you take someone through each modality, or how are you operating with the Soul Fuel?
So Soul Fuel, with the spiritual counseling, I like to be able to tailor my counseling to people's needs. So for example, if I have a client who's very intellectual, has an academic background, I know that I'm not going to reach them by starting with some breath work. I have to start with discussing philosophy with them and maybe suggesting some books. So I use that way to build a bond with them and trust. If I have somebody who comes to me who has no intellectual background really, who's very pragmatic, I might start with some yoga exercises. And then depending, and then it's a very intuitive process. Depending on what comes up, and what the person needs from this. In one session, I might use meditation and yoga and dream interpretation and EMDR type things. If I sense that the person is dealing with some traumatic events, some post-traumatic stress, then there's modalities I can draw on to help them process things that.
How are you dealing now? This is the Bible Belt, and a lot of people, even coming from a fundamentalist background, are attracted to yoga and to different things. How are you dealing with that process? That's a little different one from what you've just been describing.
Yeah, well, I think those people don't come to me.
You think they don't come?
They don't come to me.
Because I've been talking to yoga instructors and so forth that are dealing with people who are coming like that, and they have kind of developed a different approach for that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. That's wonderful that that work's being done. I think Kundalini Yoga is, from the get-go, so openly spiritual, and that people who come from a very Christian fundamentalist background are not attracted to it. Like it scares them. You know, we chant mantras in Sanskrit. You know, and for people who come from that very religious background, Christian background, that's a no-no. You know, like they feel like. So I don't really see those people in my practice that are to me. I think they're scared away automatically.
You're a scary person.
Well, yeah, and you know, and coming from I was raised a Catholic, but in the French way, which is a very, you know, we went to church on Christmas and Easter. It wasn't, you know, an every Sunday type thing. Even though I went to Catholic schools and things. And then I reacted against all of that for many years. I didn't want to hear anything about God or religion or, you know, and so I don't have the language to talk to people with a very strong Catholic background, Christian background. I don't really have the language to talk to them, and I wish I had, but that's not my strong point.
Now I've taught some classes, in fact on one of my books called Mysteries Revealed, looking at the book of Revelation as a dream, because it mentions the vision. So I use dream interpretation, dream symbols in there, and you're very much into dream work as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's part of...
Because a lot of even fundamentalist Christians, you know, have dreams.
Yeah. I assume so.
And they'd like to know what they mean. Because
Yeah.
dreams are so big in the Bible.
That's true, yeah.
So that may be your best avenue in that direction.
Yeah, thank you. I hadn't thought of that. So the dream work, okay, all of my work in philosophy was on the unconscious and the subconscious, the role of the unconscious in thought. So I had done all this work, and then I had the worst nightmares for many, many years. Like I didn't sleep properly for about 20 years. I had horrible nightmares. I would wake up in sweat, screaming, terrified. It was invading my dating. It was really terrible. And so
that's a good reason to start studying
exactly.
dream work.
So I got really interested. And then, you know, part of the formation I had to do spiritual counseling was through Atlantic University, the Edgar Casey University.
Sure.
So I studied dream interpretation there, you know, really in a more formal way. And the approach...
Did you go to Virginia to ARE to study? Or to
well, I did their online program. So, yeah, but the classes were some of the classes that ARE teaches. And dream work. So Jung, of course, Carl Jung's approach was really interesting. Casey, and then there's a wonderful man, Henry Reed is his name. He teaches at ARE, and so his process is really the one that got me going.
What's different about his process?
So it's it's inspired by Jung, but it's also using a lot of Native American wisdom and ancient Greek wisdom about dreams. And so his approach that he has this, it's a workbook called The Dream Quest. It's really wonderful. But the idea is that dreams are to develop a relationship with your dreams, where your dreams become your guides and your helpers. Right? So even if somebody like me who has horrible nightmares, my dreams were my enemies. So working this process helped me to see them not as enemies, but if they kept coming back, it's because they had something really important to tell me. And that as long as I wasn't able to hear it, they would keep coming back. So it's really allowing you to transform your relationship to your dreams and therefore to your unconscious, to your subconscious, and make them your friends. It's a really beautiful process.
Now, are you taking a theme? In my work with them, I've worked with trying to get the theme of what the dream is about on a practical level for everyone, and then working with the symbols, the dream symbols. And I've got quite a collection of dream symbols now coming from Jung and from a lot of different sources. Do you work with them in that manner, or do you have a different technique?
It's a different technique, actually. One thing that I really like about this approach is basically I have the person who's doing the dream interpretation for themselves, whose dream we're interpreting. They define their own symbols. So, for example, if you have polka dot boots in your dream, you're the one who's going to write. So there's a lot of writing involved, actually. You're going to write down what polka dot boots represent for you. Maybe it represents, I don't know, playfulness. And so from that, and then you can write your dream and then rewrite it, replacing the symbols with the meaning that you ascribe to them. So there's no subjective meaning to the symbols, independently of what you make them mean. So it's really a work, it's a way of deepening your own experience of what the dream is, but it really uncovers things you would have never thought of. So it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and there's a lot of different steps and different ways of playing with the dream. It's very playful. But yeah, another example is having a dialogue with one of the dream symbols and having the dream symbol tell you the dream from their perspective and write it down. And you learn a lot like that too. You get out of your ego. You get out of your self-image.
We had after the course in the Mysteries Revealed, we had about 7 weeks of classes because people just wanted to work on their own dreams. This is a very popular subject. And you talk about nightmares and different symbols. We had one lady came in, I think Julie was there, that came in and she was very disturbed. And for her, it was a nightmare. She dreamed that she was getting married. And the man was standing there and the minister was there. And during the course of the ceremony, she looks down and she's, oh my God, I'm pregnant. She's just like this. And it's like the conscious mind is coming in at the same time and saying, you can't be pregnant, you're 62, right? And she's got this going on, so she's quite disturbed about the dream. Now, from all of the different symbols and so forth, I've worked with a pregnancy means a new idea, a new concept.
Yeah.
A child would mean a developing concept or idea. And a marriage would be the coming together of the means to realize so I was explaining this is really quite a great dream, not a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you did that, if there were certain symbols like a child that were pretty standard all across, and everywhere I look for it, that's coming up.
That's true. So yeah, I bring that into the work as well. Yeah, those archetypal meanings. But I also really like the approach that Henry Reed proposes, which is really to allow people to interpret their own dreams without having to use any experts. Like you can really learn to work with your own dreams to uncover the meaning on your own. If you want to share it with somebody else and get more perspective, that's great, but you don't have to depend on that. And I like that.
If my interpretation of dream work is that the I am consciousness, the inner being, is talking to you. least 5 times a night and we're not listening.
Yeah.
Because you've got your 5
I
REM
agree.
state.
Yeah.
And so, to me, dream work is really, really important because learning to remember, learning to record, learning to interpret is like learning to listen to God.
I totally agree. And what's also amazing, I'm sure you've experienced that, is that the more you listen, the more you record, the more information you get. There's really an incredible feedback loop that happens.
Yeah.
And it can get a little bit overwhelming. I mean, it got to be where I was journaling every, recording all my dreams, and I would wake up 4 or 5 times in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Like recording all the dreams. I was like, okay, I need to come down.
Yeah.
But it is real, and a lot of people tell me, well, I never remember my dreams, and I'm like, have you just tried to tell yourself?
Have you ever just told yourself, I'm going to remember.
Yeah.
I'm going to dream and I'm going to remember.
Exactly. Or even saying my dreams are important to me and I would love to be able to remember them. And just doing that once before you go to bed works often.
Well, what I developed was 3 types of meditation. You were talking about various types of meditation, and the first was your visualization at night before going to bed. I want answers to this. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm creating, and telling yourself in advance.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, the second type of meditation is what I call contemplative meditation, where you'll think about whatever you want to think about. You're not trying to not think. You're not doing the mantra or anything. You're just thinking.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that then they would come back in. The dreams would come back in that way. And then a more traditional type of meditation sometime in the afternoon. Now, of course, when I tell people you need to meditate 3 times a day, their eyes roll back up in their head because they know they're not doing it once a day, much less 3 times a day. But I think that there are literally 3 types that's really necessary.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah, I like the way you distinguish between them, and they complement each other. They don't replace each other. Yeah, I agree.
Well, are you doing this once a week or twice a week? How often are you doing dream work classes?
I'm not currently offering classes. Eventually, I want to offer. I have offered several dream quests, kind of following Henry Reed's method, and that's usually a 5-week process. To basically, you have a big question in your life that you're working on, and you're going to ask over those 5 weeks. You're going to ask for dreams to help you solve that problem. And of course, Dream Quest follows, the Vision Quest idea of the Native Americans. But it's a long process. So I've done it several times, 4 or 5 times already. And then I stepped away from it recently because I was so involved with yoga. But now I'm finishing the yoga training. I think I'm going to go back to Dream Quest.
Yeah, so it's really so interesting. And the problem that I had was once I started doing it, then I was kind of inundated with people who wanted, what about this dream or that dream? So I started sort of confining it to recurring dreams. Mm-hmm. What's your experience with recurring dreams, where the same dreams are a progressive? In some cases, it's the same dream, but there's progressive stages that they're having in that dream.
So, I mean, that was my experience with those nightmares. And I think those are specifically, really the dreams that we need to do that interpretation work.
Right.
Because they're so insistent for a reason.
Yeah, that's right. They're coming for, because
there really is
they're
something you need to know. It's like, you're not listening.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. And my experiences, that really would convince me of the worth of this work, of this dream work, was I had for years this recurring dream. A lot of people have those chase dreams. You're being chased by some monster.
Or falling. Those two are very common.
And I had this chase dream. I was being chased by this really ugly monster, like some kind of giant crab.
You must have been reading Revelation.
Not even.
Because there's the monster that chased the woman around the world trying to eat the baby. You remember that?
Oh my!
That's in the book of Revelation.
I didn't even make the connection. So yeah, I was being chased and trying to organize a philosophy conference and blah blah blah, and it just it was odd. Like I woke up so anxious, just I couldn't get away. And one day from reading all this stuff about dream work, and I had this moment of lucid dreaming almost. Like in the middle of my dream, I was like, well, wait a minute. Why did I keep running? And I was getting really tired, like running, and I don't like to run very much. So finally, I just gave up, and I just stopped running inside my dream, and I turned around, and I was like, what do you want, monster? And this monster just suddenly, he was just like, I just feel so lonely, and nobody wants to play with me because I'm so ugly, and I just want friends. And I was like, oh my God, I have to hug the monster. Like, I was like, oh, poor monster. And at first, it was really hard. Like, I had to overcome a lot of disgust, because it was disgusting. Like, the skin, it was disgusting. But I overcame that, and I was able to hug it. And it just turned into this really soft creature, and then just walked right back into the sea. And I never saw that monster again. After 15 years of dreaming about the monster, this one time it took to stop running and hug it, and it's never come back.
And fear.
And I've never had a chase dream since. I've had other bad dreams, but not a chase dream.
And the beast in the book of Revelation is easily cast into the pit, or into the abyss. So what's an abyss? It's a bottomless pit. What's a bottomless pit? Something that has no basis, no foundation in truth. That the only power that it has is the power you give it, and that's what you're doing there. That's why you disobeyed it, wasn't it?
Yeah. And also, I mean, I truly believe Carl Jung's idea that every element in the dream is a part of you, is an aspect of your own psyche.
It's your dream. It's not somebody else's dream. Yeah.
So, until we can make peace with all the parts of us. And that doesn't mean let them rule us, but make peace with them and befriend them, even the parts that are the most disgusting and the most terrifying, especially those parts actually. I think if we don't make peace with them, eventually they're going to hijack us. They're going to take over.
Now you have an idea with your organization, and with these modalities you learn that it's important for the individual to find his creative powers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's another thing that came from my studies in philosophy. So I was working about unconscious and creativity. Working on the nature of thought. What does it mean to think? And what I realized from the writers that really called to me the most. Henry Bergson is one of them. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but there's this idea that thought is pure creativity. It's like you use your memory, so there's an element of memory, but really it's very creative. That's what thinking is.
And Deepak Chopra talks about that a lot too. That thought creates form. Without thought, there can be no form.
Yes.
This is the pure potentiality of the individual. In fact, it's one of the universal laws.
And there's also a sense in which I think this ability to think and to create, I mean, that's really what connects us to God. That's what we are co-creators. And so if we can connect to our creativity, not only can we, really make the world a better place. Find new solutions to all problems. That's one way of defining creativity. New solutions to all problems. But also, that really is, the divine in us.
The very essence of being is creative.
Yeah. I mean, that's what God is. It's creator.
Jesus didn't wilt the fig tree for nothing. It was non-productive.
Yeah.
He didn't tell the parable of the talents for nothing. And it's very interesting that the reward for those who doubled their thing was more responsibility.
Exactly.
So I think the universal laws are really the process of creation.
Yeah.
And everything is about that.
I agree.
So I was very interested when you told me that was your one of your emphases.
Yeah. So I think it really is spirit. It's what creativity represents. And it's also what, even for people who don't have a spiritual background or who don't necessarily connect it to the spirituality, it makes everything much more interesting. Just, a creative life is a much more exciting life than routine life where you do the same thing
Like the
over
fellow
and over
who wrote the
again.
book, A Purpose-Driven Life, I mean, he had something there. I think it's important to have a business or have a hobby or something that's part of that is a major part of your life.
Yeah, and I also really, I really believe that, or gifts or talents or the specific skills that we have are, ways in which God manifests or the transcendent manifests in matter, in the material world, in the concrete world. So I think it's really important for people to find the connection to those talents. And I think we can be a very creative baker or a very creative teacher or a very creative, you don't have to do an artistic, you don't have to be a musician or a writer to be creative. You can be creative in any area of your life. You can be a very creative, homemaker.
Well, as a publisher, I'm very interested in the writing aspect of things, and the fact that you conducted classes for some years in creative writing.
I do creative writing workshops. It's been continuous every week since 2006.
Could you give us a little mini creative writing workshop here?
I could.
Or give us an idea
Well,
of what you do.
so what we do is we come together as a group. It's usually 8 to 12 people, 12 max, and I give out prompts. So it could be the beginning of a sentence. It could be mother my ... keep going. Or it could be I wish I ... keep going. Right? Or it could be a poetry line, a line of poetry, keep going. So that's, wide open. Or I give different kinds of prompts, some that are more geared towards working on craft, dialogue, for example. And sometimes we work in groups too. One person plays one character, the other person plays the other, and we go back and forth. Or on metaphor, or whatever aspect of craft, we do it playfully by working on. So I don't lecture about how do we do this. We actually do it, and then we have time to read out loud what we just wrote, and get feedback from the group, and only positive feedback, only what worked, because this is extremely vulnerable work. It's not edited, we just produced it, we haven't had time to step back from it. So there's a few guidelines to help us keep it safe so people don't get, hurt. It's a very vulnerable process.
People don't realize how much a writer exposes themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're opening up what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And sometimes about their own life or what they have come to understand about things. So it's really laying it out there.
Yeah.
And you have to have a certain amount of ego, I think, to be a writer. You have to feel like you got something to say.
Yeah, or a lot of people actually don't feel like they have something to say. But it's a necessity. They have to write. They implode if they don't. But they feel very insecure about when they're writing. So that's where the feedback comes in. It's really amazing to see. I see it all the time in my workshops. Somebody reads something they just wrote, and you can tell they're really nervous and they're really anxious, and they're like, oh my God, what are they going to do to me? And then the group gives them, shows them what they saw in their writing.
Gives them confidence.
And you see those people, like they hear the group really showing appreciation for what they wrote. And it transforms them. You can see their face opening up and they're smiling and the skin starts glowing differently, and it's a miracle. It really is. And if you do that regularly, it really builds that confidence as a writer, but also as a human being.
That could even be a therapy, couldn't it? And some of the other things you're doing is to do the mini creative workshop in the middle of the therapy.
It could definitely be used as that. The way the creative writing workshops, we keep them from falling into therapy is I have a rule that we separate the writer from the voice in the piece. So we treat everything as fiction. So even if the person is writing a memoir, and everybody knows it in the group, even if it's written in the first person, it's obviously autobiographical. When we comment on it, we say, I really like when the narrator said in your piece. We don't say, I really like when you said. So it gives a little more separation between the voice of the piece and the person who's sitting in the room. And it helps them take some distance from their writing. And it frees them up, because then they can write about all kinds of stuff, because they don't have to say it happened to me. You know? And it's very important. That's what keeps it from being a therapy group. But if we want it to be therapeutic, as in, you know, formal therapy, then we just remove that rule and let people, you know.
Now, you're not a practicing psychologist, but you do use some Western techniques there too, as well as the Eastern. Tell us about that.
So yeah, I haven't, I'm not certified to do EMDR or things like that, but because I went to counseling for myself for several years, I learned, you know, from it being done to me, things like EMDR, which I thought was really amazing. And so, again, I've read a lot of books. You know, that's the great thing about doing a doctorate, is that you can learn pretty much anything you say.
Now, your doctorate was what?
In philosophy.
In philosophy.
Yeah, so you learn to study. Like whatever you want to really become an expert at, you just study it and become an expert.
That's what you really learn in school, isn't it? How to research, how to study.
How to learn. You learn how to learn.
And you don't really start learning until you get out in the real world.
That's right. Yeah, so I use this kind of technique when it seems appropriate, you know, and it happens that, you know, yeah, a lot of people that come to me are people who actually are dealing with similar issues that I was dealing with, or that I am dealing with. You know, they don't necessarily know it, and I don't know it before we get together, but it's kind of naturally they're drawn to me, you know. So yeah, I use some of that too when it seems appropriate.
You have a website for Soul Fuel?
Yeah.
Let our viewers have some idea of how to contact you if they'd like to ask a question or begin some dialogue.
Yeah, so soulfuel.co, it's not .com, it's .co, C-O. That's the main website, and it kind of has links to the writing workshop website as well as the counseling website, all of that. Yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with me. My email is on there, my Facebook, all of that.
Where are you taking this? Where do you see all of this going now? You're working with a number of different modalities, and you've developed Soul Fuel. Where are you going with it?
I really just want it to continue the way it is, maybe grow a little bit more. I've been doing a lot of group work with the writing workshops and things, and what I'm discovering is that I really love working one-on-one as well, developing a connection, a direct connection with a client. So I would love for that to grow more. And then the other thing that's kind of at the back of all of this that I haven't yet brought up is that I adore to travel. Traveling the world is my other great passion. And I've organized several retreats already in France and in Mexico, and I'm lucky enough that my family has a home in the south of France. So I've been taking people to the south of France for writing and meditation retreats. And so I would love to...
Where is that, near Cannes, Nice?
Nice, yeah, not far from Nice. Between Nice and Saint-Tropez on the coast.
And you know where Valbonne is?
Yes, yeah.
Spent some time in Valbonne. Where at night you could see Cannes, Nice, and Antibes at the same time.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, the coast, yeah. So what I really love being able to organize a retreat in beautiful places in the world.
What do you do in the retreats? Are you taking them through a specific program?
Well, so for now I've been doing the writers, so it's writing and yoga or meditation. And I want to develop that to kind of offer different kinds of retreats. So some of them can be more focused on writing, and some of them can be more focused on self-growth, development. With an element of excursions, we do excursions, so there's a cultural tour element as well. Because I think putting ourselves in different environments is one of the greatest ways to get out of our rut. When you're in a different place where people don't even speak the same language, first of all, it allows you to go within in a different way. It just brings up a whole lot of opportunities and perspectives. So I love that. So I'm hoping that all of this can lead to having access to more people who are interested in doing this kind of work.
Now, with all
going to
this,
beautiful places in the world.
with all these creative writing workshops and so forth, what are you doing about your own book?
Well, I write it in my workshops, in part. So yeah, I did a lot of academic writing for several years, and I published a book in philosophy. And then I realized that I was tired of writing about creativity, and I wanted to be creative. And so I've been working on a novel for 5 years. Yeah. So it's happening.
Now, the book of philosophy, was it a historical type of thing, or was it a theme? What was the theme of it?
It was actually my PhD dissertation turned into a book. So I rewrote part of my dissertation, but it was about contemporary French thought and the role of the unconscious and creativity in thought.
And you were featuring which French philosophers?
Gilles Deleuze, who a lot of people don't know him, but he's quite a big pop star of philosophy. And Henri Bergson. Bergson is a little bit more famous, early 20th century. And then Gilles Deleuze is later 20th century. So both of them.
You work a lot with what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And did you give in the summary what you're thinking?
I guess at the time when I published the book, I didn't have really my own thesis, except that I love what they had to say. My personal thought kind of developed. I guess what it's usually by the end when you finish writing the book that you realize what you were trying to say in the book, but you didn't know it when you started it.
It's amazing the number of books that I start working with, and they have no summary chapter. They never really told me what they believe, and so I go back to them and I ask them to do that.
Yeah.
And it's an eye opener for them.
Yeah.
Now the creative writing, have you produced materials on that? Is there any kind of like a workbook or something that they can get a hold to? Or
no, not yet. They just have to come to my workshops. But I'm working on the workbook to kind of help people take them through the process of completing a larger work of fiction.
Are you okay to take a few questions?
Sure.
We have some of our people who attend the core concepts that are perpetual questioners. So I want to see what we got. One here now. Ms.
Yes,
Van Brocklin.
You knew. You started out and you made a statement very quickly, and I loved it. You said, I have to teach a lot of people here how to speak English.
How to write English.
How to write.
How to write English.
Yeah.
Well, you should have added speech too, because this is one of my pet peeves. Hardly anyone speaks English properly, and it's getting so that what do you call anchors and people on the news and on TV, they massacre a lot of things a great deal. And I think in the South it's worse, but if you go to the West Coast, it's very bad. They have so many phrases, they never really speak a language, they just use cliches and things. I think this is a big problem, and I was wondering what you wanted, could you say some more about it?
Yeah, to me, it's specifically a problem in writing. For some reason, I'm more open to speech being creative and malleable and.
Not me.
But
I mean,
but
if you don't
language.
speak properly.
But I hear what you're saying, though. I mean, I really think that language is a function of the way we think, and vice versa. We think in words mostly. I mean, we think in words and images. But for words, the way in which we connect thoughts together, we need words, syntax, grammar. This is how the logic is being expressed and is being manifested and is being created, really.
Do you really think we think in words? Because I know in dreams, this is all image. I think we think in pictures.
I think we think in feelings.
But it's
all of those.
Yeah, all.
But the way in which we connect those images and those feelings and those thoughts, the way in which we order them and distinguish them, and so the whole logic, the meaning, really. You can get impressions from images, but the meaning you get from words and from how the words connect with each other. And that's where I think syntax and proper grammar is extremely important, not only for communication, but also just for people to be able to order their own thoughts and make meaning out of all those impressions. And so I think, the fact that it's so hard for many people to write and speak properly is a sign that they're not learning how to order their thought and to make meaning out of life. And as we know, it's terrifying to live without meaning.
The French are such perfectionists with their language. Because I have good old friends, one from Saint-Denis, one from Limoges. And of course, they used to raise Cain about the way Americans spoke their own language. And of course, she will let me talk to her in Italian, but not in French, because Gloria are not good enough. So, but here in this country, we're too lax, we're too liberal, we're too free with our language. And so consequently, people really have difficulty expressing themselves, I think, and they don't know it. Majority of them don't know it. And that's where I think the emphasis should be, that they should know they don't know their own language.
Yeah, and it also limits their access to so much amazing material. And because people who can't write usually can't read very well. And that I think is also very sad. Because there's so much that they cannot have access to, an incredible richness of culture that is literally closed off to them. And so, yeah, I think it really limits their possible experience of the world, and that's where it's particularly sad.
Speaking of the perfection, the French talking about perfection in the language. Working in the Middle East about 3 years, I worked around a lot of Lebanese, and they made it absolutely that the children had to learn French first, because if they learned English first, they would never speak French properly.
That's probably true. They wouldn't need to.
They of course over there they would learn probably they would speak Arabic, but they would probably learn local dialect and plus French plus English. They'd learn a lot more language conscious than we are here.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I was lucky that my parents put me in the bilingual school when I was 8. And it was pretty horrifying at the time, because my dad suffered all his life from not speaking English. And so when he discovered there was a bilingual school in our town where I grew up in Lyon, he just literally plucked me out of my elementary school and put me in the bilingual school in the middle of the school year. And I was 8 years old, and all I knew of English was yes and no. That was the only words I knew. And that school, everything was taught in English. Sports, theater, history, math, physics, by native English speakers. And the only class that was in French was French. So I was just plopped in the middle of that thing with no background in English whatsoever. But at 8, a year later I was fluent.
You're a
And
sponge.
it was hard. I mean, the first year was very hard. And my mom helped me a lot because at first I was completely lost. But within a year I was completely fluent in English. And that's why I have less of a strong
It's
accent.
sort of like
than
teaching
most
you to
people.
swim by throwing you in the water, isn't it?
That was but I'm not saying everybody should go through that way, but it's so important to start learning those languages early. It's so much easier when you're a kid.
We have a few minutes left. I wonder if you would like to give our viewers a message. Oh, we got another question. Yeah.
Did you have any successful Kundalini awakening experiences?
Repeat the question there for the sound.
The question, did you have any successful
Kundalini
awakening?
in your 3-year experience so far?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of Kundalini awakening as this very dramatic experience, and the literature kind of makes it scary almost. I think it can also be very progressive and very, it doesn't have to be this almost psychotic episode that is sometimes described in the literature. I like how my teacher describes it. He says, those psychotic type episodes of Kundalini awakening that are being described are actually a sign of blocks in the Kundalini energy. So it's a lack of Kundalini instead of too much Kundalini. And so what's wonderful about Kundalini yoga is that it is a very profound and ancient and precise technology that allows for that Kundalini awakening to happen at its own pace, and to help you be ready for it. So I haven't had any shocking experiences with it. I think it's a constant process, it's like meditation, reconnecting again and again. You don't meditate once and then have it forever, right? Or maybe, but you have to cultivate it, right? So to me, there is a sense, I would say that Kundalini is constantly awakening and reawakening in me, and I feel it. I know that it's happening by how happy I feel. When your Kundalini is awakened, you see the beauty in things. You are awake to the world around you. You feel strong. You feel, that to me is a sign of Kundalini awakening. So I'm not sure if that's what you had in mind when you asked that question, but.
So you're saying it's a gradual thing?
Kundalini yoga is a technology to allow it to be gradual, to where your system doesn't get overwhelmed by it, right? So it opens as it's ready to, and so
You have a follow-up?
No, she said she wasn't sure if that answered my question. Well, I didn't have any particular expectation. I just wanted to hear about your experiences, whatever that is.
Yeah, thank you. But and being around a lot of people who practice Kundalini yoga, and I've never seen anything that seemed overwhelming to anybody.
Not everybody.
What can be overwhelming is that, again, it will make you much more sensitive to things. So the things that are dysfunctional in your life will become unbearable. So if you're in a dysfunctional relationship, that relationship is going to eventually go away. Whether it's a marriage or a friendship or whatever. So your life is going to have to heal, and sometimes, against your what you thought you wanted. It can be shocking in that way, but not in a way that's psychotically terrifying.
We're just about out of time. Maybe one question? No?
No, I was just going to say, I found everything to be more bearable, actually. Instead of the adverse, this, that, and the other, or a problem with something morphing into something that you couldn't bear, I found that things much more bearable, and I'll share maybe something with you on camera also, but I found things to be a whole lot more bearable. And I remove the blockers.
Yeah, because you're more empowered personally, so you know you can withstand more things. So it's more bearable in that way, but you're also so sensitive.
I want to thank you very much for being with us. I thought it was very, very interesting.
Thank you for having
And I hope everyone who is watching the show enjoyed it as much as we did. I want to remind you that you can go look at the Core Concepts site on YouTube. Just go in and type in Renford Broadcast Network. There's 6 sections and Core Concepts is one of them. I want to thank you for being with us tonight and watch for next week's show. Have a good evening.